It's bad luck to see the bride before the wedding. Everyone knows that. I had never believed in what I would consider to be silly superstition. Maybe if I had, all of this could have been prevented. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Who am I? I'm the one that everyone should wipe tears from their eyes and say, she's beautiful. The one that should make the groom weep and his groomsmen elbow each other in approval. I'm the bride. My name is Emily. This is my story. Don't be afraid. I need to tell you my story so I can finally rest. It was 1901. I was the daughter of one of the wealthiest men in Virginia. Mama and I were on our way to town for dress fittings when our carriage wheel broke. We were stranded. That is when I saw him for the first time. Sheridan Jackson III, riding up on his horse, the sun making red streaks in his curly brown hair. I knew by the way my heart raced and my stomach flipped when I saw him that he was the one. Broad shoulders, big enough to carry my burdens and his. Of course he came to our rescue and promptly began to court me. He would bring flowers and slip me secret notes, poetry about his love for me. We would dance at parties and take walks through town. One day, the note asked me to meet him at one of our favorite spots, the creek on the edge of my father's land. He knelt in front of me with shining green eyes and asked me to be his wife. Father had already given his blessing. Wedding plans commenced in a flurry of excitement, my parents crowing that their darling girl was to marry one of the most handsome and powerful men in all of Virginia. Of course, I didn't care about all that. I was in love with his soul. He was kind and made me laugh, and he was strong inside and out. The night before our wedding, his note asked me to meet him in the barn, one last time before we wed. I knew it was a bad idea, and yet I went. I entered the barn wearing only my nightdress and a lace-trimmed robe, a single lantern my only illumination. And there he was, with his strong arms and green eyes, waiting for me. His jacket had been removed, and his sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing strong forearms. My eyes traveled up to his neck, where his shirt lay open, the cravat long since removed. My mouth went dry, and strange warm butterflies began to dance in my lower belly. I had never seen him in this state of undress before. It was exhilarating. I took a step towards him, and he did the same. Soon we were in each other's arms. I lifted my mouth in offering, but instead he placed a chaste kiss on my forehead. I stared at the floor in shame. He didn't want me, and now I had acted like a woman of loose morals. "What's wrong, my love?" he inquired in alarm. "You don't desire me," I said quietly. He chuckled under his breath. "Is that what you think?" He took my face in his hands gently and kissed my temple. "I want you so much," he whispered, punctuating each word with a kiss, going lower and lower till he reached the base of my throat. He lingered there and whispered against the side of my neck, "But I want you as my wife when you are mine to have." Respect and love blossomed in my chest. I nodded. I stood on tiptoes to kiss him on the cheek. His face felt hot, feverish. Are you feeling all right? I asked, placing my cool hand on his very warm brow. I am perfection, he smiled charmingly. Tomorrow, I marry the most wonderful woman on the planet. I just need tomorrow to hurry up before she changes her mind. I giggled. Never. Are you truly well? Your face is quite warm. Just a little tired from final preparations at our new home. And leaned into him. Our new home. I loved that. At long last, we parted ways. Neither of us slept a wink. The blessed day dawned bright and warm. I was so excited I could barely force down a few bites of toast and a couple sips of piping hot coffee. My two sisters and friends were giggling and offering up compliments and lewd jokes about the wedding night, as they dressed my hair and helped me into my dress. Finally, it was time. We all lined up at the back of the church, and when my turn came, all the nerves floated away. I was floating on a sea of euphoric calm. When Sheridan saw me, he smiled, and his eyes glimmered with tears. This ceremony seemed far too long. By the time we made it to the vows, Sheridan was wiping sweat from his brow with a lace-trimmed handkerchief. I noticed his brother John swaying on his feet behind him. We made it through the vows and exchanging of rings. Man and wife at last, we kissed, and the room erupted into cheers, which turned into gasps and shrieks as John fell face first with a thud. We broke apart in confusion. John was lying unconscious on the floor, his brow soaked in sweat. His pregnant wife Jenny was kneeling next to him, wiping his face, trying to rouse him. Suddenly, he sat up ramrod straight and began to projectile vomit all over Sheridan. Then he fell back down unconscious. But no, it was more than unconscious. His face lost all color, and his lips began to turn blue. Jenny listened to his chest. It was silent. No heartbeat. No breath. She looked at me with disbelief and began to shake her head as tears fell unchecked down her face. The wedding guests had fallen silent. Some of their faces showed pity, some horror, and others speculation. What had they done to deserve this? It must have been awful indeed. Sheridan stood and took charge of the situation. In light of what just happened, there will be no wedding celebration. However, there is still lots of good food that needs eaten, so please, if you wish to stay, make your way to the wedding luncheon. Thank you for being here, friends. And with that, he turned and his shoulders slumped. He looked so tired. The guests slowly filtered out, not sure if they should say congratulations or condolences. The men moved the body to the communion table until funeral provisions could be made. While the men made plans, I sat on a pew with Jenny, trying to comfort her. "Did you know John was ill?" I asked quietly. "No," she sniffed. "He went to town with Sheridan yesterday morning. He seemed fine last night, just tired, which is normal when he goes to town." I nodded. Sheridan was also tired last night, and his skin was so warm I thought he was ill. Her eyes flew to mine. Yes, John was like a furnace in bed last night. I didn't think anything of it. Just then Sheridan appeared in front of us. "Well, ladies, we've done everything we can for now. I know you don't feel like it, but you two should try to eat something." He swayed a little unsteadily on his feet. "Darling, are you all right?" I asked worriedly. "I will be. It's just a shock, I'm sure. My brother's gone. He should have had so much more time. With his wife, with his baby, with me. His voice broke. Jenny sobbed quietly. I don't want food right now. I want to be alone with my husband, to say goodbye. You two go. It's your wedding luncheon. I'll be fine. I searched her face and then slowly nodded. Sheridan offered his arm, and we left Jenny alone with John to say goodbye. Out in the sunshine, with the birds singing in the soft breeze, it seemed like John's sudden death wasn't real. It was all just a bad dream. We ate in mostly silence, till we both tired of trying to force down food neither of us wanted. When suddenly we heard a scream from inside the church. Sheridan jumped up and ran. I followed as fast as I could. Inside the church, there was the sound of a struggle and more screaming. It was Jenny. Nothing prepared me for what I saw when I reached the door. Jenny was on the floor. John, come back from the dead, was on top of her, growling, teeth snapping like he was trying to bite her. Sheridan reached them, yelling, John, stop it! Stop! You will harm your baby! John glanced up at him with filmy, glassy, dead, unfocused eyes. There was nothing alive in those eyes. My blood went cold. Sheridan reached down to pull him off of her, but he was too late. I heard the sickening sound of tearing flesh as he bit into Jenny's shoulder. Blood rushed out of the wound, and she screamed in pain, fear, and shock. Sheridan got a good grip and pulled John off of Jenny. John now focused his dead eyes on Sheridan. A horrible sound came from his blood-stained lips, and he lunged at Sheridan. The growling and hissing sounded like a rabid animal. A gunshot rang out from behind me. John crumpled, his eyes completely lifeless, a gaping wound in the back of his head. I ran to Jenny, tried to stop the bleeding in her shoulder. We need a doctor, I barked at the man who had fired the shot from the doorway. He nodded and ran off. Sheridan fell to his knees in exhaustion and shock. I wanted to go to him, to be his strength, but Jenny needed me right now. She gave a low, guttural moan. Is it the baby? She nodded. I've been having pains all day, but I didn't want to say anything until I was sure. It's your day, not mine. Oh, Jenny, I would be honored to share this day with your little one. She chuckled. I don't think this baby is giving us a choice. Just then the doctor hurried in. I was just about to take my afternoon nap. What the devil is going on? He stopped short when he saw the three of us on the floor. Jenny bleeding and panting through a contraction, Sheridan looking pale and sweaty, and John's bloody corpse laying in a crumpled heap. His eyes settled on me as if looking for an explanation. He knelt next to Jenny and opened his doctor's bag. When are you due? He asked, listening to her heart. Not for another 3 weeks, but I've been having pains all day. They're getting worse now. I think when I fell, my water broke. I shall need to examine you then. He looked at Sheridan to give us some privacy. Sheridan nodded and slipped out the door. Her waters were indeed broken, and there was some blood, but not enough to worry the doctor. While he saw to the bite wound, I told him everything that had happened. When I finished, he asked, had he been in town recently? Yesterday morning, I confirmed. I've heard of several cases like this in town, people coming back from the dead and attacking their loved ones. I shivered unconsciously. I wanted Sheridan. Where was he? It had been almost an hour. I asked Jenny if she minded if I stepped out for a moment, promising I'd be back very soon. The sun was beginning to slant in the sky. I didn't see Sheridan anywhere nearby, so I decided to walk around the other side of the church. There I found him laying in the grass where he had fainted. I ran to his side and put his head in my lap. I heard a loud groan from inside the church. Jenny must be getting close. I needed to go back, but I couldn't leave him here. Just then his eyes fluttered open. He weakly brought his hand up to caress my cheek. I love you, he whispered. We both knew he was saying goodbye. Suddenly he rolled over and began to convulse and vomit. While I cried helplessly, my heart felt like it was being ripped out. I knew he was dying and I couldn't do anything to help him. He went still, his form lifeless. I kissed his brow one last time and walked slowly back to the church. My feet felt so heavy. Breathing was a chore. When I made it back to the church, Jenny was squatting and panting hard. I hurried to her side. A few pushes later, and a little girl came screaming into the world. The doctor placed her in Jenny's arms. Jenny cried quietly and said, "She's beautiful. Her name is Joan, after John." She smiled up at me. "Where is Sheridan? I'm sure he wants to meet his niece." I swallowed hard and slowly shook my head. "He's dead. I found him when I went outside, and he died in my arms." We cried together. The doctor went out to examine Sheridan's body and came back a few minutes later. "You're sure he was on the side of the church?" I nodded. "Well, there's no sign of him now." Fear prickled down my spine. I knew what that meant. "Do you think he came back like John?" Jenny asked. The doctor nodded. "I'm afraid it is possible." I wanted to be sick. Jenny's eyes fluttered closed. Can you take the baby? I'm so tired." "Jenny, let's get you home in the carriage. Then you can rest in your own bed." She nodded weakly. After the doctor carried her to the carriage, he turned to me. "Keep an eye on her tonight. Her skin feels warm. She may have an infection." I nodded solemnly. I climbed into the carriage holding Joan. I got Jenny tucked into bed and then called for a wet nurse to feed Joan. I ate supper alone in the non-formal dining room. I had barely eaten all day and surprisingly had a large appetite. When I finished, I went to go check on Jenny. She was shivering and soaked in sweat. The doctor was immediately summoned. When he arrived, he confirmed that her fever was very high. I checked on baby Joan. She was sleeping peacefully in the nursery with the wet nurse. When I came back to Jenny, she was sleeping peacefully with a cool cloth on her forehead. Satisfied that I had done what I could do, I decided to go home and check on my family. They had no idea what had transpired or the danger we were all in. When I entered my father's house, I was met at the door by my mama. "Emily, what are you doing here? Where's Sheridan?" "I'm so sorry about John. How's Jenny?" I shook my head as tears welled up in my eyes. I grabbed onto her and held on like she was a lifeline. I told her everything that had happened to John, to Jenny, to Sheridan. What the doctor said about there being more undead in town. She listened calmly and stroked my hair. My dress was no longer snowy white. It was stained with blood and dirt and vomit. My hair was a mess. "Honey, why don't you go change your dress and fix your hair? We still have some of your things in your old room." "I need to get back to Jenny and Joan," I said. "And you will. Just take a few minutes to refresh yourself." I nodded and obediently went to change. I was brushing my hair when I heard shrieking from outside. I threw my hair into a braid as I flew down the stairs. Mama was holding my little brother Peter in her lap, rocking and crying in anguish. "What happened?" I cried, beginning to sob as I realized he was dead. The groom that had carried Peter in from the barn told the story of how Peter had been playing in the barn. When he saw Sheridan from behind, he had always looked up to him. So he ran up to him to ask him to play. Sheridan had turned around and attacked Peter like a rabid animal. The groom had found them. Peter, lifeless, and Sheridan feasting on him like a monster. The groom had fought Sheridan off and ended him. The day was rapidly catching up with me. I leaned over and was violently sick. I stood up shakily. "I need to go back to Jenny and Joan. You can barely stand, Mama protested. I'll be fine, I said, wiping my lips on the back of my hand. The carriage took me back to Jenny's house. Every minute seemed like 10. Finally, I was back upstairs with baby Joan. She was a plump, pretty little thing. I held her for a few moments and decided to take Joan to see her mother. The room was dark. A small fire burned in the hearth. A single candle on the bedside table. The doctor was dozing in a chair by the bed. Jenny, I whispered, I brought your beautiful little Joan to see you. I came closer to the bed. Jenny, your sweet baby is here. She didn't stir. I looked closer in the darkness. Her face was very pale. I watched her chest for a long time, desperate to see movement. Nothing. Tears slid silently down my cheeks. I walked heavily to the doctor and roused him. He checked her pulse and confirmed that there was nothing that could be done. She was gone. He gave his condolences and left. I called for the wet nurse to come take Joan so I could say goodbye to my friend and sister by marriage. I leaned on the wall next to the door while I waited for the wet nurse. I held Joan tightly against me and looked at her sweet face, the face of an orphan. Fresh tears sprang to my eyes. Just then, my eyes focused on movement coming from the bed. Jenny's hand was twitching. I swallowed back a scream. Jenny's body sat up in bed. Fear wrapped its long, icy fingers around my heart. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. Horrible, raspy breaths came from her body. Her eyes were blank and unfocused. Just then, there was a soft knock at the door. Jenny's head snapped in my direction with a growl. I inched toward the door, praying she wouldn't attack the baby. The door clicked open. I thrust Joan into the waiting arms of the nurse, yelling, "Go!" as I slammed the door behind them. Jenny was almost on me, her teeth snapping. She pinned me to the wall, trying to bite me. I knew I would have to destroy this creature. Jenny was gone. This was something evil. I looked around frantically for a weapon. My eyes fell on the poker by the fireplace. I managed to push her off. She was very strong, even in death. I ran toward the fireplace, and in my haste I tripped over my skirts. 1,000 curses I had never been allowed to say as a lady sprang to my lips. My heart beat out of my chest like a rabbit being hunted. She was almost on me again. I was pulling myself backwards as fast as I could. Just as my hand wrapped around the poker, Jenny leapt on me. In that split second, I did what I had to do and plunged the poker in deep. She fell limp on top of me. The room was completely silent, except for the dying fire and my gasping breaths. I finally managed to push her off of me and stand on shaky legs. I yelled for the nurse, and she appeared a few moments later with Joan. I loaded them into my carriage and took them back to my father's house. I had to warn my family about Peter. When we arrived, we were too late. The whole house had been slaughtered except the barn hands, which had been outside. We had to stop them from rising. I instructed them to build a big fire as fast as they could, and we burned all the bodies. The smell was horrible. We were done. No more infected to spread the plague. I only hoped the people in town realized what must be done to stop the spread and carnage. I looked at Joan. We made it. We'll be all right. Miss, said the nurse, what is that big scratch on your neck? I swallowed in dread. I hadn't felt the pain until now, but I could see it now. Right before I had pushed Jenny away and ran for the poker, she had scratched me. I hadn't felt it at the time. I was in a frenzy to survive. I looked at the grooms and barn hands with calm resignation. Keep the fire burning hot. I'm infected. You must burn my body before I rise. But please, I only ask to be buried with my family in our family cemetery. They honored my wish. People still talk about the strange Virginia outbreak of 1902, but nobody really knows how it started. But I know why. And now, so do you.